Pie in the sky or humongous cosmic rock hurtling towards Earth? Could an asteroid wipe out humanity one day? Who will stop that rock? NASA's been working on it. Now China says it wants to rescue us with its first planetary defense mission. So with the space race on again, are these missions solely about blowing up celestial risks, or, as critics fear, slipping nukes into space and developing new weapons?
What's always difficult about space is it's transparent. We can see everything, but we don't always know the intention of the operator. We don't quite know what they're doing.
Mark Hilborne is an expert on defending the planet. He also dabbles in all things that go boom.
The very difficult problem about space is that every element of technology involved in space is effectively dual use. So everything you develop can have, experimental, scientific, civilian, commercial, or military use. So we can think of everything from launch. If we look at SpaceX today, they launch military satellites as well as commercial. The satellites themselves can be the same, and even the data that they produce can be used for whether it's commercial or it could be military purposes. China wants to become the dominant space power by the mid-2040s.
But how worried should we be about an asteroid wiping us out first? Composition, speed, angle, and size matter. Anything bigger than a semi-trailer about 20 meters will get through the atmosphere. A 40-meter wide meteor is considered a city killer. Scientists believe one hit Siberia in 1908, leveling 2,000 square kilometers of forest. It exploded well above the ground. If it had slammed directly into a city, the impact would have been even more devastating. If you're still not scared, look around you.
We can find evidence of many craters on Earth, and if you look at planets without atmosphere, and the Moon is an excellent example. It's peppered with asteroid impact craters. So clearly there are asteroids out there. Many of them will burn up in our atmosphere, but there's a lot of evidence that those have hit Earth, and they hit constantly other planets as well.
But it's not the gargantuan ones you have to worry about.
The larger ones that change the whole ecosystem on Earth, those are probably fewer and far between.
It's the smaller truck-sized ones.
These present a much greater threat because there's more of them, and they're harder to track. The asteroid they're looking at is 30 meters across. It's the size of someone's back garden, let's say. That's a very small thing. So if you can find that and track that and destroy that, well, there's many other things like spacecraft or other things that you can target. One of the bigger problems is we just can't see some of these, or we can't see them until it's a bit late. Sometimes we just don't know whether they're coming. So we need to be able to, I think, react to these.
Listen up, people. I know a thing or two about extinction. And let me tell you, and you'd kind of think this would be obvious, going extinct is a bad thing.
Early warning systems are in development. China's working on a more extensive one. Still, the US has the most to show when it comes to defending the planet. NASA's DART mission in 2022 altered an asteroid's orbit by crashing a spacecraft into it at hypervelocity. China wants to do the same by 2030, and a new paper claims the mission is more ambitious and realistic than NASA's.
The Chinese experiment is to hit an asteroid at about 4 million miles away, about 18 times the distance of Earth to the Moon, at a speed of Mach 26, a very high speed, about 9 kilometers per second. And you're going to do so using a spacecraft that will split into two. One of them will be the impactor, and the other will be the observation craft, to give a real-time update on what's happened in terms of the impact, what it's done to the trajectory of the satellite, and a number of other important pieces of data.
Chief Scientist for Planetary Defense at the China National Space Administration, Li Mingtao, is in charge. He says the main aim is to alter its orbit, worst case, break up its structure. That sounds risky.
If you can do so, and you can predict accurately, changing its trajectory would be better. The trouble is with destroying it is you create multiple fragments, and you don't know where they're going to go, and that would be very difficult. The trouble with all of them is that level of predictability. So you might bump it off its course, but there is always the chance that you bump it into a more dangerous orbit.
So the risks are high whether you bump or blow this satellite into oblivion. But the significance of the Chinese plan?
I think it's significant in that it's actually selected an important type of asteroid. It's more ambitious in the way it's going to strike it and have an observation craft with it. and it's done at significant distance. It's actually not as far away as the NASA DART mission, but nonetheless, it's showing real capability at real distance, with the ability to observe what's happening at very high speeds. It's about 50% faster than the previous NASA DART mission. So this will be, and the impact that you create as you increase the speed increases kind of exponentially.
But is there a hidden agenda here?
So some of the Chinese studies are also talking about placing a nuclear weapon perhaps inside an asteroid, if we can do so, using a sort of a first impactor to make a kind of crater or a hole, and a second one to put a nuclear weapon in. That runs into the kind of international ban on putting weapons of mass destruction in space, whether it's in orbit or on a celestial body or anything like that. There is competition in space. The treaty, the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, does limit what we can do in space. However, it was written in 1967, and there's been many more technological developments and the advent of very large, powerful private companies, which were things that it didn't really gauge and predict. The trouble is with space is that given its military import, a lot of this is classified, and some very useful discussions get shut down very early because this is all classified information. That's starting to change as we get more commercial activity in space, and therefore there's a lot more what we call open source intelligence about what's happening in space. It can't be closed down so easily. So space is becoming more transparent.
And China's overall mission is also becoming clearer.
Looking at a number of different white papers that China produces and a number of other statements, China wants to become the dominant space power by the mid-2040s, which is not that far away, really. And the technological gap between, say, the US or the West and China is narrowing all the time. But that does mirror a military buildup elsewhere. And China has certainly identified the fact that the US in particular, the West more broadly, have more invested in space, but they're the most dependent on space. Targeting it, limiting it, jamming it, all of these are things that it sees as a very useful military tactic. It also positions China in a way that it's not just following in space, that it's setting some of the parameters of space. And by being at the technological forefront, you actually have a better chance, I suppose, of saying, well, we can set the rules too.
We don't even have rules yet on how to deal with a problem closer to home: space junk, dead satellites and millions of high-speed fragments of metal orbiting Earth, which threaten the launch of any mission.
So the more we put in space, the more debris there is in space. And there's theoretical studies, something called the Kessler effect, which means that if you actually have enough debris, you will perhaps instigate a collision of some kind, and that in itself will create more debris and instigate a second collision, and so on, and you get this exponential increase of collisions and debris. Hollywood would tell you that happens in 15 minutes. I mean, real life, it could take a century, but it nonetheless, it's a real risk. And the more we have in space, and the more we do in space, the more likelihood there is about some kind of collision. So that's something it's not just the stuff that falls down to Earth, as you mentioned, that is problematic. It's actually, will we at some point have enough debris that we are entombed on Earth that we can never escape? I think that's a long way off, but it's building. It's certainly building.
And we'll be following this story for you as long as we can. I'm Ben Fajzullin. See you again soon.